book. Now let me talk for a little bit about lyrics. So here we believe that the lyrics must be in the voice of the character, which means you're going to have to approach the lyrics differently for every single character in the show. The same is true of the dialogue, and at the end of the day, the lyricist should be looking to their book writer to help them understand the voice of the character so that when a character goes from speaking to singing, it's seamless and it feels like it's the same person who's doing that, even if it's two different people writing that. I talked already a little bit about why I felt you shouldn't mention lyrics in a song outline. Here's the other reason. When you're writing the rough draft, the other reason I don't think you should mention a song in there is because this is the book writer's opportunity to discover the voice of the character that the lyricist will then completely steal. And that's your job. Your job is to look at the words that your book writer is using and allow that to create the voice of the character in your head. That's where the lyrics will come from. Some of the words the book writer writes will inspire song titles or ideas for whole songs. So you don't want them to just write and they sing, the ensemble number here. You want them to write even more, to give a character a great big long monologue or turn a confrontation scene into 3 or 4 pages of dialogue. As the book writer, you know that's going to disappear, but the lyricist will thank you because you're giving them all of that information. A number of years ago, Stephen Sondheim was in LA, and we were lucky enough to get him to come and do a Q&A session for our NMI members. We sold out the Colony Theater, 350 seats, in 1.5 seconds online. We crashed our website. Anyway, it was awesome to have him, and obviously people had a lot of questions to ask him about craft. And he made it very clear, when he was asked about this, about writing songs, he said that he would never, ever in a million years start to write a song until he had heard what the book writer wrote so he knew what the voice of the character was. He said he just wouldn't do it. He would never write a song until he heard the voice of the character from the book writer. He's had a lot of different really great book writers, but he relies on them. He understands the importance. Sondheim in particular, of course, is, I think, absolutely brilliant at perfect prosody, perfect rhyme, things we're going to talk about more. But he never, while he's doing perfect craft, he never loses sight of the want and the need of the character. It's always really, really in there in the lyrics. And one of my favorite lyrics of all time is from Sweeney Todd. And it's from the first act finale, Have a Little Priest, which is, devolves into this silliness about all the different kinds of people that they could kill and bake into pies. And they're laughing about it. Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney are laughing hysterically about, making jokes about the people they're going to kill and put into pies. And the audience is laughing hysterically. I saw the original Broadway run with Angela Lansbury and Len Cariou. And we were all laughing hysterically at this number. When we came back after intermission, that's when I suddenly went, uh-oh, this isn't going to end well. but we were laughing at the end of Act 1. So that lyric could just be all of that. It's a list song. Essentially it's a list song and it's hysterical. But my favorite lyric is the one where Sweeney sings, "I'll come again when you have Judge on the menu," which not only flows mellifluously, so you have no problem saying it or understanding it, it has an internal rhyme that's beautiful, but it is absolutely speaking to the unwavering want of Sweeney Todd. He wants to take vengeance on the judge for what he did to his family. So in the midst of all this silliness, he says, "I'll come again when you have Judge on the menu." So, pretty cool stuff. So that's part of why in this room too, we are real sticklers for pure rhyme and perfect scansion, which we'll talk about a lot. Now, over the last few years, many, many Broadway musicals, especially the ones that have been inspired by more popular music, tend to use impure rhymes, slant rhymes, near rhymes, whatever the words are that you want to use for them. Now, often they're used quite purposefully because the pop music that they come from, that they're emulating, in pop music, those rhymes are preferred. In pop music, often, if you're taking a pop writing, songwriting course, and you bring in perfect rhymes, they'll laugh at you and they'll say it's kitschy and it just sounds sort of icky. It's better if you use euphony, which means that the vowel sounds are similar enough that you get this sort of really nice stuff going on in your mouth. But you don't worry so much about the consonants because when you match those up, then it starts to sound kitschy, they think. So they purposefully don't use it. And that's why a lot of that shows up in Broadway musicals that are using more of that kind of pop art form. Now, I believe, and what we try to teach in this room, is that even if you are trying to write a pop musical, there are some elements from musical theater writing that you can still bring in without giving up the craft, that the style that you're going for. And the reason for that is because in a musical, we need to understand those lyrics in the moment that we're hearing them. In a pop song, you're going to hear it on the radio, you're going to be doing your vacuuming, you're going to be on a road trip, it's in the background, you sing it with your friends. Maybe the first 3 or 4 years of your favorite song, you got one of those lyrics wrong, and somewhere along the way you find out, oh man, I always thought that was this, but it was this. And it doesn't really matter because you get lots of opportunities to hear it or check in with somebody else and say, I don't understand that line, what is it? In a musical, someone buys a ticket and they sit down to watch the story of your show, and they need to understand the lyric the moment it's hitting them, or they're actually going to start to lose the story. And so that's why we think it's important to stick to pure rhyme, even if you're writing pop-style music. Now, that doesn't mean you have to rhyme every 2 seconds. It's going to sound, if you don't have to write rhymed couplets, or you don't have to write, a rhyme schemes. Your rhyme can be rare, but when you do rhyme, we feel it's really important that it be pure. Now, you guys can make your own decisions in your own musical theater writing careers. If you leave this course going, I don't really agree with that. I think slant rhyme is perfectly fine, and I'd have no issues with it at all. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. That's a decision you get to make. But we are going to push you while you're in this room to aim for pure rhyme while you're here studying. Give it a try. If at the end of this year you decide you don't need it, or sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, that's your choice, and that's perfectly reasonable. But we don't want you to avoid pure rhyme because you can't do it, because you're lazy, because you can't be bothered. We want you to avoid pure rhyme because you understand what happens when you do it, and you're employing it purposefully, and that's perfectly all right. Anything that you do with purpose is perfectly reasonable. But if you're just doing it because you're lazy or you don't know better, that's not worth it. So we will constantly be pointing it out in this room. So learn to do it perfectly, then make your own purposeful decisions about whether to keep doing it or not. Now, a word you're going to hear a lot in this room is prosody, Prosody, prosody. It's a word that's used more often in poetry, and the definition for poetry is the patterns of stress and intonation in a language. In musical theater, we've adopted that word to more mean the marriage of lyrics and music, or the alignment of stresses in music with stresses in the lyric for the purposes of clarity of meaning. So what that means is once you add the lyrics to the music, what you want to make sure is that you haven't put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Although, again, that happens sometimes in pop music, but it interferes with our ability sometimes to understand the lyric. If you're doing it purposefully, like the purposeful many different pronunciations of popular, popular, if you're doing it on purpose for comic effect, go for it. But if you're just doing it because you can't be bothered to find the right rhyme, that's not a good reason, or to get the stresses right. There are other forms of prosody than just the typical one of, the beats of the music tend to be on 1 and 3, so you want the strong beats of the words to land in those same places. That's the most common form of prosody, but there are some other ones that you'll be learning about over the year, like linear prosody, which have to do with the breaking of a phrase, meaning that when the musical phrase breaks, so should the lyrical phrase. And if the lyrical phrase does not break, then the musical phrase should not. Again, it's all about clarity. Because if I were to stop my sentence midway because the music stopped there, then you're going, wait, what is she saying? What? So you want to match up the phrasing as well, and we call that linear prosody. And there are various other things as well that you will study in the lyric lab, so I won't go into that too now. But the tools needed by the lyricist are vast, really they are. I personally think that lyric writing is the hardest craft. I think they all have their difficulties, but I think lyrics are the hardest because you're writing in a very small box. You have so many things to consider. You have rhyme scheme, you have prosody, you have song structure, progression. There's so many parameters, and you still have to tell the story, and it has to be true to your character, and sometimes it also has to be funny. It's an awful lot to do in this tiny little box. So I think it's really hard. But I think you'll find that the lyric lab that's a part of this program, for those of you who are lyricists, I think is absolutely amazing. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Now, I'm throwing around a lot of terms, like I just started talking about progression and structure and lots of other things. Some of you already know what I mean when I use those terms, and some of you don't. And I know that can sometimes be frustrating if you're the one who doesn't know and you're like, oh, I don't want to have to ask when everybody else seems to know. We happen to have a glossary of terms that you can link to. It's part of our musical theater writers resource center, which is online as part of our website, but you can also link to it directly from your Core Curriculum homepage. So you can look up a word like prosody, and it will give you a definition, and you can look up song structure, and it will give you not only a definition, but often examples to help you understand. So if a question comes up that doesn't get answered in this room, have a look at the glossary, and it should help. So progression, which is one of those words, I think progression is the one tool in a lyricist toolkit that separates a good lyricist from a brilliant lyricist. And the Lyric Lab unit on progressions, which is fairly early on, I think it's if not the first, it's the second unit in the Lyric Lab. Once you've taken the progressions unit, you're going to regret every lyric you ever wrote in the past when you didn't know about progressions. It is mind-boggling. So I'll give you one quick example. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because the Lyric Lab takes care of that, but I want you to understand what I mean by it. There are many different kinds of progressions. One of them is what's referred to as a time progression. I'm going to give you an example of that. So the song "If Ever I Would Leave You" from Camelot, he sings, if ever I would leave you, it wouldn't be in autumn. And then when he comes around, if ever I would leave you, it wouldn't be in summer. If ever I would leave you, it wouldn't be in springtime. And then eventually he sings, no, never would I leave you at all. So so the progression goes through the passage of time, the seasons, and then it lands on this wonderful idea that, no, I'll never leave you, which is actually really beautiful. And the progression takes us there. So if he just sang the lyric, I'm never going to leave you, that's nice. But when it's preceded by this progression, it's awesome. And there are so many different kinds of progressions that you can use. There are pronoun progressions, and there's just a million of them. And the Lyric Lab will talk you through what they mean and how to use them, and what song structures lend themselves best to which kinds of progressions. But there are other tools that you learn in the Lyric Lab, like euphony and metaphor and alliteration and rhyme. There's just so many tools you need in your toolkit, and the Lyric Lab will deal with a lot of that. Now, none of that even I haven't even started to talk yet about the concept of song structure. In the heyday of the American musical, in the 40s and 50s, there was a term, Tin Pan Alley. And what this referred to was, I'll read you the definition. Tin Pan Alley is the name given to a collection of New York City music publishers and songwriters who dominated the popular music of the United States in the late 19th century and early 20th century. It originally referred to a specific place, West 28th Street, between 5th and 6th Avenues in the Flower District. Some other things, if you look it up online, you'll say that they say the origin of why it's called Tin Pan Alley is, there are several different reasons, but one of the ones I liked was that the expression tin pan was slang for a decrepit piano. And so the term came to mean a hit songwriting business in the early 1900s. So that was back when, as I was saying earlier, the popular music of the day that you heard on the radio and just in everyday life was also what you were hearing in musicals. And so the most popular song structure in Tin Pan Alley music, which therefore made its way into musical theater and dominated musical theater for decades, is the AABA song structure. When I say AABA, I am using capital letters. You can hear me. Which you have to be careful about not to confuse them with the small letters which we use to represent rhyme scheme. Very confusing. But if you use small letters, AABA, that means a rhyme scheme like in a limerick, right? Where you have, there once was a man from Nantucket who's something or other a bucket. His daughter named Nan, that's your B, ran away with a man, is your B. And as for the bucket, Nantucket, so that's AABBA. Small letters. So the capital letters AABA refer to the structure of the song itself, not to the rhyme scheme. And a typical AABA song, and this is the exact definition, there are many variations, but the exact definition is that it is a refrain of music that has 32 bars of music. The first 8 are considered the A section, the first A. The next 8 are an exact melodic repetition of the first A, and that's the second A. The next 8 are some completely different musical material, usually also with a different rhyme scheme. And that's referred to as the B, or in popular music, it's often referred to as the release or the bridge. And then the final 8 returns to the same melodic structure as the original A, and that's your third A. Often there's, you can also add to that a repeating lyric, which is sometimes called a hook, that might be in the same, it usually is in the same line of the A section each time, usually either the first or the fourth, although it can vary, but usually it's either the first or the fourth line of the A section. There are variations, like I said, you can have an introductory verse that comes before the AABA. You can develop the A. Oftentimes the third A will develop and change a little bit and become an A prime or a coda of some kind. Sometimes the second A will develop. So there are variations on a theme, but those are the basics of AABA. There are other structures, many other structures. There's ABAB, which is similar to what in country music or folk music they might call verse chorus. ABAB, there's ABAC, there's any combination of letters you can come up with, there's a song structure that you can use. And of course there are many songs that don't use any particular song structure and they just break all the molds and do whatever they want. But as with everything else I've been talking about today, we think it's really important for you to master the AABA form while you're here in this room. And to understand why it works, why it's so powerful, why it's been used for so many years. Even today you'll find lots of songs are still written in AABA. And so that then when you decide you want to do it differently, you'll be doing a different structure because the nature of the story that you're telling in the song needs a different kind of a structure, or for some other reason that is purposeful, and not just because you don't understand the power of the AABA. So, quick example of an AABA is something like Somewhere Over the Rainbow. If you think that through, somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue is your first A, and the land will come true. And then the second A starts again with somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow, why then, oh why can't I? That's your second A. It is musically identical, and it has the hook in the first line. Then someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. It's your B section, and then you go back to the A with a slight variation. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow, why then, oh why can't I, which is identical, but then they add on the, if happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh why can't I? So that's a little development of the third A, but that's a pretty classic example of AABA. Now, I'm talking about rhyme and prosody and structure, and it's hard to talk about all those things just talking about lyrics because they all also involve music in similar ways.